Get right back up again, and when we do, the world's going to hear the roar of our engines.
When Clint Eastwood climbs into his daily driver, it looks like an ordinary 90s SUV. But this machine can destroy Ferraris off the line and embarrass sports cars costing 10 times more. Only 4,697 were ever made, and Eastwood owns multiple versions. Yet recently, he's been spotted driving something completely different, a tiny car that seems impossible for his 6'4" frame. The contrast is so shocking that fans couldn't believe the photos were real. His car choices tell a story nobody expected from this American icon. Clint Eastwood came into the world on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, and he made an unforgettable first impression. He weighed 11 pounds at birth, so big that his parents nicknamed him Samson, after the biblical strong man. The name stuck through his childhood, as neighbors and relatives called him by it for years. His size wasn't just a family joke. It gave him a presence that people remembered, a trait that would later carry into his screen career. His father joked that little Samson could probably swing a hammer already, a playful hint of the rugged roles that would one day define him. The Eastwoods had little stability during Clint's early years. The Great Depression made steady work almost impossible, and the family moved constantly in search of jobs. They lived in San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, Redwood City, Carmel, Sacramento, and a handful of other towns. Clint switched schools 9 times before he was 14, always the new kid trying to fit in. He learned quickly to read people, to adjust, and to keep his guard up. The family lived in cramped boarding houses and small apartments, sometimes with Clint sleeping on couches or sharing a bed with relatives. Money was scarce, with his father working odd jobs that sometimes paid only $20 a week. Out of necessity, Clint developed a calm, stoic nature and a strong sense of self-reliance, traits that later became part of his on-screen identity. In the summer of 1937, a moment came that nearly ended his story before it truly began. At just 7 years old, Clint wandered into the deep end of a community pool in Piedmont. He couldn't swim, and he sank straight to the bottom, lying motionless, while dozens of swimmers above had no idea what was happening. A lifeguard named Tommy Peterson finally spotted him, pulled him up, and performed mouth-to-mouth until Clint coughed up water and started breathing again. That brush with death left him with a sharp awareness of danger and a respect for survival that stayed with him his entire life. As a teenager, Clint wasn't always the picture of discipline. In 1949, he and some friends borrowed their principal's Buick for a joyride in Oakland. It ended badly when they hit a fire hydrant. Fueled by panic and anger, Clint smashed school property with a crowbar, an act that got him expelled. He was forced to transfer to Oakland Technical High School, where he discovered the auto shop program. There, he learned to work with engines and bodywork, sparking a passion for cars that followed him for decades. He would go on to own more than 30 vintage cars, maintaining many of them himself. Just a couple of years later, Eastwood faced an ordeal that could have ended in tragedy. In September 1951, as a 21-year-old Army private, he boarded a Douglas Sky Raider for what was supposed to be a routine flight. The engine failed over the Pacific, and the plane went down in cold, rough water. The aircraft sank in less than 2 minutes. Clint and the pilot were left floating without proper life vests, forced to swim more than 3 kilometers through freezing waves. Clint towed the struggling pilot toward the shore, and after nearly 4 hours, they finally made it to land. When the Coast Guard found them, they were barely conscious. The experience burned into him a belief that survival comes from calm persistence, a lesson that would shape many of his film characters. After leaving the Army in 1953, Clint found himself broke and searching for direction. He took tough jobs as a lumberjack, gas station attendant, and even a forest firefighter just to scrape by. At night, he spent $25 on acting classes at UCLA, though he often lived on little more than peanut butter and coffee. He nearly gave up on the classes, calling the exercises fake and pretentious, but his natural charisma kept drawing attention. Those difficult nights would eventually shape the no-nonsense acting style that made him unique. His first real break came with a screen test at Universal Studios in 1954. The scout's written assessment wasn't flattering, calling him too tall, too stiff, and too slow in speech. Yet he was still signed for $75 a week, thanks to a casting director who noticed his piercing stare and commanding height. For a year and a half, Clint appeared only in small background roles, often uncredited. His first speaking part gave him just one line, but he treated those early jobs as film school, studying directors and learning the craft while barely making enough to live on. By 1958, he was close to giving up entirely. Universal had dropped his contract, and he was in debt with a pregnant wife at home. Then came an audition for a new CBS Western, Rawhide. Clint's military horseback training gave him an edge, and the producers saw something in his quiet intensity. He landed the role of Rowdy Yates, and everything changed. Rawhide premiered in 1959 and quickly became a hit. Clint started at $750 per episode, but within a few years, his pay soared to $10,000 per episode. He was suddenly one of the highest-paid Western stars on television, with fan mail pouring in by the thousands. His face was on lunchboxes, comics, and toy guns. Yet even at the height of that success, he felt restricted, calling himself a prisoner in chaps. Behind the scenes, he was already planning a new path. In 1962, frustrated by Rawhide's wholesome image, he began studying Italian in secret. He had heard about gritty new westerns being made overseas and wanted to be ready. His instincts proved right. Just 2 years later, director Sergio Leone came calling. In 1964, Sergio Leone was struggling to find an American actor for his low-budget western. He dreamed of Henry Fonda, but Fonda's fee was far beyond reach. James Coburn came next, but his demand of $25,000 was still impossible for the Italian production. That was when Clint Eastwood stepped in. At the time, he was making $750 per episode on the television show Rawhide. He accepted Leone's offer of $15,000, which in today's money would be about $152,000. Eastwood packed 2 suitcases, including a weathered poncho he brought himself, and flew to Rome. Leone admitted later that he chose Eastwood not for his acting, but for the way he moved, slow and deliberate, with a cat-like presence. That modest choice created one of cinema's most famous characters and launched both men's careers to new heights. Leone had planned to keep tradition by having his lead appear clean-shaven, as Hollywood Western heroes always did. Eastwood refused. He argued that stubble would make his character look real, a man shaped by dust and hardship. At first, the cinematographer worried the rough beard would cause problems with lighting, but Leone eventually agreed. That decision transformed the look of the Western. The scruffy anti-hero became the face of the spaghetti Western, setting it apart from the polished American films. Between 1964 and 1978, more than 600 spaghetti Westerns followed, all carrying the shadow of Eastwood's unshaven face. The look became so iconic that makeup artists had to carefully recreate the exact 3-day growth pattern for every film in the trilogy. By 1966, the gamble paid off. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was made for $1.2 million and earned $25.1 million domestically, with a worldwide total of $38.9 million. Eastwood's deal was groundbreaking. He received $250,000 up front 10% of the box office gross, and even a new Ferrari. His cut from the worldwide gross reached about $3.9 million. His first time earning more than $1 million at only 36 years old. The deal showed Hollywood a new way of compensating stars, and Eastwood's decision to take a percentage rather than just a flat fee set a pattern that many actors would later follow. The production carried danger as well. During the filming of the famous train scene, Eli Wallach had to lie between the rails as a real locomotive thundered past. What no one noticed was that the train's cars had heavy metal steps hanging low, inches from his head. If he had raised it even slightly, he would have been killed. Leone, focused on the shot, brushed off Wallach's fears until after the train had passed and the danger was clear. The crew decided to keep the first take and never risk it again. That terrifying moment became one of the most talked about near disasters in film history, and later led to stricter safety rules on sets. After that film, Leone wanted Eastwood for Once Upon a Time in the West and Duck, You Sucker. He offered $1 million plus a percentage, a huge sum in 1967. Eastwood turned it down. He was tired of the grueling schedules in Europe and didn't want to be trapped playing the same character forever. He also felt Leone had become more interested in spectacle than in people. Instead, he returned to America and starred in Hang 'em High in 1968, earning $400,000 plus 25% of the profits. The choice proved wise. Leone's later films were praised, but without Eastwood, they never reached the same box office success. By 1971, Eastwood was ready for something new. Dirty Harry opened just 5 days after Sean Connery's Diamonds Are Forever and shocked everyone by nearly matching Bond's numbers. Diamonds earned $43.8 million domestically, while Dirty Harry reached $35.9 million, despite being made for only $4 million compared to the massive costs of a Bond film. The film showed audiences wanted a different kind of hero, one who walked the gritty streets of San Francisco instead of sipping drinks in glamorous casinos. The movie also created a cultural wave. Harry Callahan's .44 Magnum revolver, the Smith & Wesson Model 29, suddenly became the most wanted gun in America. Gun shops couldn't keep up with demand. Customers walked in quoting the famous line, asking for Dirty Harry's gun. Even police departments began looking at upgrading their weapons because of the film. The revolver was no longer just a gun. It became a symbol, tied forever to Eastwood's character. Not everyone was celebrating. Outside the Academy Awards in 1972, protesters held signs calling Dirty Harry a rotten pig. The American Civil Liberties Union attacked the film for promoting police brutality, and Roger Ebert called it fascist, even while praising it as a thriller. The backlash grew with later films, especially The Enforcer in 1976, where critics said the story was hostile to women. Eastwood stood firm. He argued the movies showed frustration with the courts and the system, not support for fascism. He said Harry was the voice of Americans who felt left behind in a changing world. The debate only made the character more iconic, capturing the mood of the decade. Eastwood's push for realism often put him in danger. When a stuntman in The Enforcer asked for more pay to jump from a 40-foot bridge onto a moving bus, Eastwood fired him and did the stunt himself. In The Iger Sanction, he trained for months in Yosemite to perform climbing sequences that left him dangling above a 1,000-foot drop. The only thing he refused was a fall of 2,500 feet, which was filmed with a dummy. His insistence on doing his own stunts gave the films an edge that audiences could feel, far beyond what special effects could create. In 1988, the fifth and final Dirty Harry film introduced a chilling story about a game where people bet on which celebrities would die next. Called the Dead Pool, it turned out to be strangely prophetic. Within a decade, real death pools began circulating on the internet, with people betting on famous names. The film even featured Jim Carrey in one of his earliest roles, playing a rock star whose overdose sets the story in motion. Looking back, the movie feels eerily ahead of its time, predicting how entertainment and morbid curiosity would later mix in the digital age. By then, Eastwood had also stepped into directing. In 1971, while still filming Dirty Harry, he shot Play Misty for Me in only 21 days with a budget under $1 million. He finished 4 days early and $50,000 under budget. The film earned $10.6 million, proving he had a gift for efficiency. He chose to film in Carmel by the Sea instead of Los Angeles, keeping costs low and quality high. He even tricked his friend Don Siegel into doing 11 takes as a bartender before revealing the camera had no film. That was only the start of what became known as the Eastwood system. He rehearsed extensively before filming, kept takes to a minimum, and always finished on time. By 1985, Warner Brothers calculated his approach had saved the studio $50 million. Across his career there, his 46 films earned more than $9 billion on budgets totaling only $2.7 billion. He also proved Westerns could still succeed. In 1985, Pale Rider earned $41.4 million, the top Western of the decade, at a time when the genre was considered dead. Made for just $6.9 million, it showed that with the right star and story, audiences still cared. 3 years later, Eastwood pushed technical boundaries with Bird, a film about jazz legend Charlie Parker. Since Parker had died in 1955, Eastwood used original recordings mixed with new performances, syncing them with actors on screen. Steve Jobs later cited this technique as an influence when developing QuickTime, the software that made audio and video playback possible on early computers. In 1992, Eastwood released Unforgiven, a film he had been holding on to for 15 years until he felt old enough to play the role. The wait was worth it. The film earned 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director for Eastwood, who also starred in it. He became the first person to win Best Picture while acting in the same film, a feat he repeated years later with $1 Million Baby. Unforgiven made $159 million worldwide and was later preserved by the Library of Congress as a work of cultural significance. Eastwood dedicated it to Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, the mentors who helped shape his career. In 2002, Clint Eastwood filmed Mystic River in just 39 days on location in Massachusetts. The cast, which included Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, and Kevin Bacon, was stunned by his directing style. Eastwood was known for using the very first take of a scene, a method that kept the pace fast and the budget under control. The entire production cost only $30 million, and the film went on to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in 2003 before its wide release on October 8th. It earned 6 Academy Award nominations, winning Best Actor for Penn and Best Supporting Actor for Robbins, and eventually grossed more than $156 million worldwide. The success proved that Eastwood's stripped-down approach could deliver both critical praise and commercial results, setting the tone for much of his later work. Just a year later, Eastwood took an enormous risk with $1 Million Baby. Warner Brothers had little faith in the project, so Eastwood personally guaranteed the full $25 million budget. His gamble paid off when the film brought in $216.8 million around the world, including $90 million domestically and $67 million overseas. At the 77th Academy Awards, the film dominated with 4 wins: Best Picture, Best Director for Eastwood, Best Actress for Hilary Swank, and Best Supporting Actor for Morgan Freeman. Warner Brothers eventually shared the costs with Lakeshore Entertainment, But it was Eastwood's confidence and financial commitment that turned the movie into a defining triumph of his career. In 2006, Eastwood tried something few directors had ever attempted. He filmed 2 war movies at the same time, both centered on the Battle of Iwo Jima, and released them just 10 weeks apart. The first, Flags of Our Fathers, came out on October 20th with a budget of $90 million, but earned only $65.9 million worldwide. The second, Letters from Iwo Jima, told the Japanese perspective almost entirely in their language with subtitles, something many predicted would fail with American audiences. Yet this film, released on December 20th, cost between $13 and $19 million and earned $68.7 million worldwide. It started in only 5 theaters before expanding to 781 at its peak and kept drawing audiences with a 7.37 multiplier. Letters from Iwo Jima received several Oscar nominations and proved that Eastwood's belief in international storytelling could break through language barriers and win both praise and profit. 2 years later, at the age of 78, Eastwood directed Gran Torino and negotiated a unique part of his payment. Instead of asking for more cash, he requested the 1972 Ford Gran Torino Sport used in the film. The car, painted forest green, originally worth between $13,000 and $30,000 when restored, was powered by a 351 Cobra jet engine, making it a true muscle car of its era. Gran Torino became a global hit, earning $270 million worldwide. Eastwood kept the car afterward, and it remains in his collection, occasionally displayed at the Warner Brothers Studios Picture Car Museum. The decision to take the car instead of money has since become a Hollywood legend, showing his practical mindset and personal tie to the story. Even in his later years, Eastwood continued to break records. At 89, he directed Richard Jewell, released on December 13, 2019, with powerful performances by Kathy Bates, Sam Rockwell, and Paul Walter Hauser. Then, during the pandemic, he shot Cry Macho in only 1 month and released it on September 17, 2021. At 91, Eastwood became the oldest filmmaker to release a major studio film. Cry Macho received mixed reviews with a 5.7 rating on IMDb, but it showed that even after 7 decades in Hollywood, he could still put on a cowboy hat and deliver a story. Critics noted signs of slowing down, yet the achievement confirmed his status as one of cinema's most enduring directors. Back in 1986, Eastwood's life had already taken an unusual turn when he ran for mayor of Carmel by the Sea. The campaign began after the city council rejected his plan to build a small office building. The final push came from a controversy over an ice cream shop. The city had denied a permit, arguing that cones violated an old ordinance about food packaging and would use more water than the shop that had been there for 15 years. The media mocked Carmel as Scrooge City, and Eastwood ran for office, winning on April 8, 1986. Just 1 month later, he overturned the decades-old restriction and allowed ice cream cones in the streets again. Though his monthly salary was only $200, Eastwood donated all of it to the Carmel Youth Center. With fewer than 5,000 residents in the town, the donations added up to $4,800 during his 2 years in office. He chose not to run again in 1988, saying he wanted to spend more time with his children. But his term left a mark with practical improvements to the community. In 1993, he surprised fans by supporting the Brady Bill, which created background checks and a 5-day waiting period for gun purchases. The move shocked many because Eastwood had built his film image around guns, especially with the .44 Magnum and Dirty Harry. The NRA was furious, and some supporters felt betrayed, but Eastwood stood by the decision, saying he believed it would improve public safety. In 2012, he made headlines again during the Republican National Convention. Scheduled to speak for 5 minutes, he ended up improvising a 12-minute talk to an empty chair meant to represent President Barack Obama. More than 30 million people watched live, and within a day, the hashtag Eastwooding had generated 1.4 million tweets. The moment became one of the earliest viral political sensations, with countless memes and photos of empty chairs spreading across the internet. Away from politics and the spotlight, Eastwood's personal life carried its own surprises. Laurie Murray, born February 11, 1954, discovered in her 30s that Eastwood was her biological father. She had been adopted as a baby and grew up unaware of his identity. When she reached out, her birth mother refused contact, but Eastwood welcomed her. Their bond grew quickly, and she even appeared with him at the 2004 Oscars. Her existence remained unknown to the public until 2018, when she was introduced as his daughter at age 64. Over the years, Eastwood fathered 8 children with 6 different women, but married only twice. His first marriage to Maggie Johnson lasted from 1953 to 1984, but he admitted to multiple affairs during that time. Biographers suggest the number of children may be higher than publicly known, with one said to have been conceived when he was still in high school. His relationships included partners such as stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis, actress Frances Fisher, and flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves. One of his most difficult personal chapters came after his 14-year relationship with actress Sandra Locke ended in 1989. She sued him for palimony, and Eastwood arranged a supposed development deal worth $1.5 million with Warner Brothers as part of the settlement. Locke later discovered that the studio had never truly backed the deal, and that Eastwood had secretly funded it while ensuring her projects went nowhere. She sued again in 1996 for fraud, and though the case settled privately, jurors admitted they had already decided in her favor. Locke described him as the unfightable one, saying the outcome showed that even powerful figures could be held accountable. Despite these storms, Eastwood has kept remarkable health. At 94, he still begins each day at 5 in the morning with exercise. He has avoided sugar since his 40s and maintains a diet rich in fish, fruits, vegetables, and pasta, while staying away from red meat and dairy. His body fat has remained under 12% for decades, a level his doctor once called extraordinary. He follows a rule of eating healthy 90% of the time while allowing 10% for small indulgences, a balance that has kept him strong and active through nearly a century of life. Clint Eastwood is 95 years old, yet he still drives a vehicle that surprises almost everyone who sees it. His daily car is a 1992 GMC Typhoon, one of only 4,697 ever built. It looks like a boxy early 90s SUV, but it's nothing ordinary. This truck can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.3 seconds, faster than many Ferraris from the same era. Back in 1992, Road and Track tested it and clocked a quarter mile at 14.3 seconds, an unbelievable time for an SUV at that point in history. Under the hood is a turbocharged 4.3-liter V6 that produces 280 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Eastwood has owned at least 3 different Typhoons, including a 1992 apple red version and 2 forest green models from 1993. The metallic green one he drives most often has golden badging, and he has been photographed countless times climbing into it. On The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, he even joked that it beats Ferraris off the line. For all his love of American muscle, Eastwood also drives something that seems completely out of character. Around Los Angeles, he has been seen behind the wheel of a tiny 2014 Fiat 500e. The sight of the 83-year-old action star plugging the small electric hatchback into a charging station in Venice quickly went viral, especially since he was heading to work on American Sniper at the time. The Fiat 500e cost around $32,000 when new and offered only 111 horsepower. taking 9.1 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour. Its range was just 84 miles from a 24 kilowatt-hour battery. Eastwood had already shown support for electric cars a year earlier when he joined a charity auction called Into the Green, where celebrities signed 500 E models. Hugh Jackman's signed version sold for $50,000. The contrast between his thunderous Typhoon and the quiet Fiat shows an unexpected side of him that not many fans would have guessed. His car collection also includes something far more valuable. In 1966, legendary Italian producer Dino De Laurentiis gave him a Ferrari 275 GTB as a gift. It wasn't just any car. This Ferrari, chassis number 8359, was payment for Eastwood's role in the Italian film The Witches. The 275 GTB is considered one of the most beautiful Ferraris ever built, designed by Pininfarina, with a 3.3-liter V12 engine under the hood. Today, it is worth about $1.7 million. Eastwood was photographed with it in San Francisco in 1971, and the car remained in his collection for years. The gift came at the perfect time. In that same year, Eastwood became an international star with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, for which he earned just $250,000. The Ferrari was actually worth more than his paycheck for the role that changed his life. Eastwood's choices have never been about easy money. In 2025, his net worth is estimated between $375 and $400 million, putting him among Hollywood's wealthiest figures. But he has repeatedly refused to take blockbuster superhero roles that could have paid him $15 to $20 million each, saying he prefers stories that don't involve capes and tights. Instead, his fortune comes from smart business moves, especially through his Malpaso Productions company, which has generated over $100 million. His royalties and licensing alone bring in $5 to $10 million every year, while his real estate holdings are worth another $30 to $35 million. Over his career, he has earned more than $300 million from acting, directing, and producing. At 95, he is still working, recently completing the film Juror Number 2, while most of his peers have long retired. By keeping ownership stakes in many of his movies, including Dirty Harry and Unforgiven, he secured passive income that continues decades later.